Revenge with Karen.
I'm not kidding, Howard Lennox once made a Saudi prince cry and then sent him a fruit basket shaped like a middle finger. That was the first sentence out of my mouth before sunrise, half asleep, barefoot, already pouring espresso, while patching a diplomatic blow-up between two billionaires over which Amalfi villa they both accidentally rented for the same week. I wasn't supposed to be on that call. Technically, I wasn't even in the chain of command. But as usual, someone high enough on the food chain had whispered, "Loop in Caroline. She'll fix it," so I did. By 6:47 a.m., the prince had agreed to take the villa in Portofino instead. The Italian property manager was sending a complimentary truffle hamper, and I'd diffused what could have become a $400 million grudge match with 2 polite emails and a voice memo. By 7:03, I was invisible again. That's the rhythm, my rhythm. Execs love to treat me like a particularly efficient ghost, never invited to strategy offsites, never mentioned on org charts, but mysteriously copied on every email that could collapse the firm if it went sideways. I don't mind. Let them eat catered lunch while I keep the ship from sinking. But today was different. Today, I was prepping for the kickoff dinner with the Lennox family, the firm's largest legacy client. A literal dynasty, kind of account that doesn't just fund bonuses, it defines careers. If a partner's kid wants a beach house in La Jolla, odds are Lennox's retainer paid for the foundation. And now, rumor was the father, Howard Lennox, aka the Iron Whale, was stepping back, not retiring, just stepping into strategic oversight, which in rich people speak means watching silently from a mahogany throne while his heir screws everything up. Enter Logan. Logan Lennox, name that sounds like a failed startup or a cologne for trust fund babies. Harvard MBA, yacht teeth, reputation for firing people mid-meeting for sport. The firm had been courting him for months, and tonight's dinner was supposed to seal it. A generational transition, a symbolic torch passing. And guess who they asked to guide the transition behind the scenes? Not the partner whose name is on the Lennox file, not the senior VP with the $900 shoes and the fake tan that ends at his neckline. Me. Just keep things smooth, they said. You know how Howard is. And Logan's different. Just play nice. Translation, babysit the heir, flatter the old man, and for God's sake don't say anything clever. Just nod and refill the wine. I didn't argue. I've learned not to. But something itched under my skin as I pulled up the final guest list and saw my name marked support staff. 18 years. 18 years of flying across continents on 48 hours notice, smoothing over affairs, leaks, lawsuits, and one accidental engagement. I once got an arms dealer to sign an ethics clause. But sure, support staff. Still, I smiled, because I knew something they didn't. You see, I've survived here for nearly 2 decades not because I begged for power, but because I learned how to wield it sideways. Influence that doesn't require a title. Leverage that doesn't need a spotlight. I am not a brand. I am a weapon. And tonight, that weapon was being placed quietly on the table, right next to Logan Lennox's gold-plated ego. By the way, if you're the kind of person who actually reads all the way into stories like this, you're probably smarter than half the exec team here. So if you enjoy these tales of quiet chaos and poetic justice, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. It actually helps us way more than you think, and it keeps stories like this rolling. Now, back to dinner prep. I ran a final check of the seating chart, made sure the PR intern's phone was cleared for recording, just in case, and took a breath. Firm had no idea what kind of storm was about to hit. Logan Lennox was coming to dinner, and I was about to serve the main course with a side of career retribution. The steak was dry-aged, the wine was older than most of the interns, and Logan Lennox was 43 minutes late. I had just finished my second sip of Barolo when the restaurant doors flung open like some invisible hand was cueing his entrance. He strolled in like a man who'd just gotten off a yacht and wasn't sure if he'd bothered to put on socks. Spoiler, he hadn't. Navy loafers, white pants, a camel blazer slung over his shoulder like it might catch mediocrity if he wore it properly. He didn't look at me, or anyone really. Just waved vaguely in our direction and said sorry, had to take a call. Geneva thing. No one asked him to clarify. All knew Geneva was code for coked-up brunch with hedge fund parasites. He took his seat at the head of the table, Howard's seat, mind you, and barked a laugh when the sommelier asked if he wanted to hear the wine list. Let's not pretend anyone here has a palate. Charming. Introductions began. The the senior partner trotted out his usual bootlicking monologue. "Logan, it's an honor. We're all excited to see where you take the firm's legacy." Father has always been a visionary. Logan looked bored, like he was auditioning for the role of disaffected tech bro #2 in a failed HBO pilot. He scrolled through his phone while the firm's brightest minds pitched him like he was Shark Tank's final boss. I didn't speak. I poured wine. I observed. Then, halfway through the main course, he looked at me and smirked. "So what do you do exactly?" he asked, loud enough that 2 waiters paused mid-plate. Before I could answer, he added, "Wait, don't tell me. Logistics? Scheduling? Corporate morale? You're the one who makes sure the CEO has mints before a pitch, right?" The table chuckled uneasily. The partner beside me turned scarlet. Someone tried to pivot to dessert. I smiled, lips tight. "I make sure nobody here accidentally loses this account." He blinked, then snorted. "Right, very important work." For the rest of the meal, he ignored me, which was fine. He had other priorities, like watching his father's face twitch every time Logan interrupted someone or mispronounced a partner's name. But then dessert ended. Plates cleared, espresso served, and I stood. I reached across the table, hand extended. "Logan, I don't believe we've formally met. Caroline Shaw. I've been with the firm since your father signed on. It's a pleasure." He glanced at my hand like it was covered in ants. Then he leaned back, grinned wide, and said, "I don't shake hands with staff." It was loud. The room froze, literally. One waiter stopped mid-pour, wine bottle tilted. No one moved. I felt my cheeks flush, not with shame, but with something sharper, colder. I pulled my hand back slowly. "Of course," I said, like I was thanking him for handing me a napkin. "Thank you for clarifying." Then I turned slightly, just enough to meet eyes with the intern 2 seats down. It was recording the evening for our client legacy archives. She nodded, barely perceptible. We had it. I sat down, smoothed my napkin, took another sip of espresso, said nothing. Let the partners squirm. Let Logan grin like he'd won something. Let the waiter finally finish pouring the wine. I didn't need to retaliate, because the camera had already captured the moment he declared war on the wrong woman. And tomorrow morning, it placed that warhead in front of the only man he was still trying to impress. His father, Howard Lennox, the Iron Whale, and when Howard saw it, there'd be no coming back. By 7:12 the next morning, the footage was in Howard Lennox's inbox. No subject line, no body text, just the full, uncut video file from the PR intern's phone, audio crisp, angle perfect, timestamp clear. I didn't include a single word of commentary. Howard was a man who didn't like to be told what to think. He liked to see. And once he saw what his only son had done to me, he'd know exactly what came next. I wasn't hoping. I wasn't guessing. I just waited. I didn't dress differently, didn't pace, didn't vent to anyone. That's not how I play. Let them chatter. Let them underestimate. That's half the sport. I spent the morning doing what I always do, clearing diplomatic fires, flagging contract inconsistencies, and discreetly ensuring a certain fashion mogul's emotional support dog wasn't listed on a restricted breeds list for their upcoming villa stay. But something had shifted. By 9:30, the whispers began. I caught the tail end of it near the copy room. 2 junior associates muttering over boxed croissants. He said she was out of line, that she undermined him at dinner. "You mean Caroline? How?" She barely spoke. He's calling her insubordinate, that she embarrassed him in front of the partners, wants her reassigned. I walked past without looking at them, heels clicking like punctuation. At 10:17, I got a meeting removal notice from the internal calendar system. Lennox Transition Task Force canceled. 5 minutes later, I was removed from the client Slack channel. By 11:03, I couldn't access the transition deck. Permissions revoked, locked out. They didn't even bother to mask it. No polite excuse, no clerical error, just silence. The digital version of someone slamming a door in your face, then drawing the blinds. It wasn't just Logan, of course. He was the match, not the furnace. The execs had been waiting for a chance to erase me from the spotlight without technically firing me. They were probably thrilled. A neat solution. She stepped out of line, now she's benched. No fuss. No fallout. And still, I didn't respond. Not when the internal comms manager emailed a friendly reminder about roles and boundaries. Not when the SVP of client strategy accidentally sent me a Teams message meant for someone else. Let's keep her out of any high-level convos till this cools. Not even when the intern, God bless her, found me by the espresso machine, looking pale. Do you want me to delete the footage?" I smiled. "Absolutely not. Back it up." Twice. By lunchtime, Logan was holding court in the executive lounge, loudly describing his frank talk with the board about setting new boundaries with legacy staff. I passed him on my way to the elevators. He smirked like a kid who just spray-painted the school gym and gotten away with it. "Enjoy the paperwork," he muttered under his breath. "Someone's gotta keep the coffee hot." I didn't stop. I didn't blink. I didn't even change expression. Something in me snapped clean and quiet like a piano wire. Not rage. Not yet. That would come later. This was colder, sharper. The moment when your body stills but your brain starts rearranging the pieces on the board, moving pawns, summoning knights, identifying exactly where the king will fall. I'd given Howard Lennox a mirror. Now I just had to wait for him to break it over his son's smug little head. And the moment he did, I'd be there. Smiling, still invisible, still underestimated, and still holding the match. At exactly 11:08 a.m., my office phone rang. The landline, because Howard Lennox didn't believe in texting anyone over the age of 30. It wasn't him, it was security. "Miss Shaw, Mr. Lennox is here. He's demanding access to the boardroom. Does he have an appointment?" Pause. He says, quote, "Tell them I don't book time in buildings I built." I stood, adjusted my blazer, walked to the window that overlooked the private elevator bay. There he was, Howard Lennox, storming through the marble atrium in a charcoal overcoat that looked more military than fashion. No entourage, no assistant, just him and a black leather folder clutched in one hand like a legal weapon. Across the hall, the boardroom was hosting a high-stakes merger pitch with a biotech firm. Millions, maybe hundreds of millions, on the table. Cameras on. Notes projected. Suits sweating. I didn't warn them. I just watched as Howard Lennox walked past reception, bypassed the executive assistant who tried to intercept him, and pushed straight through the glass doors of the boardroom. He didn't knock. He didn't ask. He detonated. "I hope you're not talking numbers," he said, voice slicing through the room like a courtroom gavel, "because none of this is happening." Silence. Utter, biblical silence. The biotech CEO looked like he'd swallowed his tie. Board chair stood up halfway, then sat back down like his knees gave out. Howard walked straight to the table, tossed the black folder in the center, and opened it like a judge reading verdicts. Screenshots, transcripts, video stills, all of it. There was Logan smirking, me extending my hand. The exact moment. The words captured in perfect clarity. "I don't shake hands with staff." Still image alone looked like a scene from a documentary titled The Fall of Empires. Howard didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "This woman," he said, tapping one page with his index finger, "is the reason we ever did business with you. From the first day. Before your logos, before your keynote decks, before your succession fantasies." Then he slowly, deliberately pulled the signed merger contract from the folder and ripped it in half. Clean. Unhurried, each tear echoing off the walls like gunshots in a church. "Now," he said, folding the pieces, "she's the reason we won't." He turned to leave, but just before he hit the door, he looked directly at the board chair and added, "Tell your team, next time you humiliate a queen, make sure her king isn't watching." And he was gone. No one breathed. The head of M&A was blinking like he'd suffered a mild stroke. The biotech rep mumbled something about rescheduling. Board chair looked like he might puke. I remained at my desk across the hall, not in the room, not even close. And yet, I felt the exact second the balance of power shifted. Phones started ringing, assistants scrambling, lawyers pulling up NDAs and damage clauses. But me, I opened my next calendar invite like it was just another Tuesday. Because now, for the first time in 18 years, I wasn't the firm's secret weapon. I was its only shot at survival. Every executive who had ever smiled while ignoring me just realized I wasn't in the shadows anymore. I was the spotlight. It started like a tremor, barely noticeable. At 11:21 a.m., an urgent calendar invite pinged every C-suite inbox. Crisis response, immediate attendance required. No subject line, no attachments. Just panic dressed up in Outlook formatting. By 11:29, I watched from my glass-walled office as the execs filed into the smaller war room 2 doors down. Not the boardroom. That would have required composure. This was damage control, pure and feral. Someone knocked over a chair. Another forgot their laptop. You could almost smell the cortisol. They closed the blinds. Classic. The same blinds I'd watched Howard Lennox disappear through 15 minutes earlier, leaving only shredded paper and a room full of grown men blinking like hostages. I didn't follow. I sat at my desk, sipping what was left of my cold espresso, clicking through a property contract for a luxury condo in Singapore. A client wanted a view without paparazzi risk. Easy, my email buzzed. Subject, urgent realignment discussion Caroline Shaw. Forwarded through 3 assistants, copied to 4 VPs. No one directly addressed me. Of course, CFO was leading the charge. Paul, a man whose spiritual calling was diffuser of things that make powerful men look stupid. He spoke in risk matrices and often confused loyalty with inertia. By 11:46, I could hear muffled voices. Raised, then quieter, then raised again. At 12:01, he emerged, hair askew, jaw clenched, tie slightly loosened in that performative, I'm working hard kind of way. He walked toward my office, checking his phone twice before stepping in like he expected me to throw a stapler at his face. Caroline, he started, breath already trying to sell. Look, obviously that was unexpected. Mr. Lennox made his point. Loudly, we're regrouping. I didn't respond. He shifted weight. What we'd like to propose is a full reinstatement to client relations. Senior tier, no more transition oversight, pure top-level accounts, and a retention bonus. Generous. Silence was a whole language. He cleared his throat. This isn't a demotion. It's a realignment. You're indispensable to our legacy clients. That's been clear. Let's get back to what works. Back to what works, where I stay in the shadows, where I make the money and they pretend I don't exist. I didn't nod. I didn't shake my head. I just looked at him with the kind of calm that made his Adam's apple twitch. I'll consider the offer, I said, which meant I already declined it, left pretending that was a victory. At 12:27, a text came in from an unknown number. Local area code. Short, Lennox fallout, we should talk, your reputation precedes you. Attached, a calendar link, a private driver's number, and the logo of our fiercest competitor. It took me precisely 4 seconds to type. Appreciate the interest. Let's keep the door open. See, then I archived the message. Let them watch me not flinch. At 1:00 p.m., the hallway outside my office was a parade of people pretending nothing happened. Small talk, laughter a little too loud. One junior partner even complimented my scarf like she hadn't ignored me for 4 fiscal quarters. Fake calm always follows real crisis, like bad perfume sprayed over a crime scene. I wasn't buying it, because now every hand in the firm was nervously watching mine, wondering which card I'd play next. Would I walk? Would I leak? Would I sue? I did none of those things, not yet. Instead, I finished the Singapore contract, sent a birthday bottle of Macallan to a client in Dublin, approved an art restoration expense for a Tokyo financier who trusted me more than his accountant, and I waited, still poised, still watching. Because when you hold the cards, you don't show them, you deal them. The invitation came wrapped in faux elegance and thin desperation. Pale blue envelope, hand-delivered by the chairman's assistant with an apologetic smile, like I was being summoned to tea rather than a white-collar exorcism. Gold foil on the card, cursive script, dinner at the chairman's private estate. Business casual, meaning pretend this is cordial. It wasn't. At 7:01 p.m., I pulled up to the wrought iron gates in a black sedan, driver silent. Estate was everything you'd expect from a man who'd never once had to click sort by price while booking a hotel. Vine-covered stone, manicured hedges cut with borderline military precision, and a circular driveway that screamed old money trying to look relaxed. The chairman himself opened the door. He looked tired. Not from age, he was younger than Howard Lennox by a decade, but from proximity to panic, a particular exhaustion of men who always assumed the elevator only went up. Caroline, he said, too brightly, you look radiant. Radiant like a chandelier, like something expensive but inanimate. I stepped inside. The dining room was dim, just enough candlelight to flatter. The long table held 5 seats. 4 were occupied, CFO Paul, Legal VP Meredith, Head of Client Strategy Darren, and the chairman. All men, all freshly humble. One reached for the wine. The chairman cleared his throat. We wanted to speak. Privately, candidly, of course they did. Look, said Paul, hands folded like a middle school principal. We know this past week has been turbulent, and you've been put in an impossible position. We want to acknowledge that. Meredith chimed in, her voice trained for depositions. There have been gaps, cultural blind spots, legacy behaviors, and frankly, some failures in oversight. I waited. Darren, the peacock usually too self-important to breathe without a nod of approval, leaned in with faux sincerity. We've realized your role deserves elevation, visibility, authority. We'd like to formally offer you an executive-level position. Elevated client strategy. He paused like he expected applause. Reporting directly to the board, the chairman added, and we're prepared to discuss a bonus structure to reflect your value. Reflect my value. Really thought I'd bite. I smiled, slow, almost warm, then reached into my handbag and placed a slim black notebook on the table. They stared. I flipped it open and rotated it toward them. Inside, 12 years of documentation, handwritten notes, email printouts, screen captures, names, dates, meetings where I wasn't listed as a contributor despite building the pitch, deals that got signed on the terms I negotiated, attributed to someone else's slide deck, pay tables, project rosters, performance reviews with language like excellent under pressure but lacks leadership presence, and a sticky note with a direct quote from a former VP, long since retired. She's brilliant. But let's be honest, she's not the face we want in front of billionaires. No one spoke. I tapped the notebook gently. I'm not here for promotion, I said. They flinched. You don't need a strategist. Need a purge? I let it hang. Then a CEO. Darren looked like he might swallow his tongue. Paul leaned forward. Caroline, come on, there's protocol, steps. You don't just I do, I cut in. Calm, surgical. I've done your job, all of them really. Just without the title and the corner office. And I did them better, while making you all look good. The chairman ran a hand through his hair. What exactly are you proposing? I'm not proposing, I said. Meredith's lips tightened. There are implications. The board would need time to know, I said, meeting her eyes. You don't need time, you need spine. Silence again. Then I stood, tucked the notebook back into my bag, and added, you have until Friday. Clean house. Start with the men whose NDAs you keep renewing. Then call me. And I walked out, heels clicking on marble like a metronome, counting down their last chance. Behind me, the room stayed frozen. He had asked me to dinner expecting negotiation. Instead, they got a deadline. By Monday morning, Logan's name was gone from the company directory. No memo, no farewell post. Just vanished, like a coffee stain scrubbed from an expensive tablecloth, still there if you looked close enough, but no one wanted to. The official phrase was indefinite leave to focus on family priorities. Translation: Daddy told him to sit down and shut up before the real wolves started sniffing around. But Logan was just the appetizer. By Tuesday, 2 partners had voluntarily stepped back to pursue new opportunities. Both of them had hand-shaped the firm's boys' club for years, one famous for credit stealing, the other for a trail of 2 a.m. Slack messages that always started with working late and ended in legal settlements. The night before they vanished, the chairman had called me directly. No assistant, no hesitation. 3 names, he said, yours to pick. Who goes first? I gave him 2. He already knew the third. At 6:42 a.m. that same day, HR sent out a subtle policy update. Buried on page 3, new language clarifying that all prior NDAs related to inappropriate conduct, retaliatory behavior, and gender-based performance reviews would be re-examined for compliance. Called it alignment with modern standards. I called it prepping the body bags. By 9:00 a.m., HR's internal Slack channel was on fire. I wasn't on it, of course, but people talk, screenshots leak. I saw the fear in the form of questions. Do we reopen case #14? Should we audit Derek's mentorship files? How long has Meredith known about that off-site incident? The firm was spring cleaning its soul, and I didn't lift a finger. I didn't have to. That afternoon, as I walked past the HR floor, a young analyst I'd only spoken to twice looked up from her desk and stood, not quickly, not dramatically, but with a kind of quiet reverence. She nodded once. I nodded back. By 3:00, my inbox was full. Subject lines like, thank you. You're the reason I stayed. I'm crying in the stairwell. One read, he told me I'd never lead a pitch. You just erased him. I didn't reply to any of them, not because I wasn't moved, but because I didn't come this far to become a symbol. I came to become the last executive standing. This wasn't a victory lap. This was just the gate opening. The rage wasn't gone, it was tempered now, refined into a weapon with a handle and an aim. Every whisper, every email, every woman quietly stepping into herself now. It was power. Raw, messy, and earned. But I didn't want to be their inspiration. I wanted to be the last mistake the board ever made. At 5:12 p.m., the chairman's assistant sent me a brief message. Board vote. Thursday, be available. I responded with a single word, understood. Then I deleted every draft resignation letter I'd ever saved. Let the exodus begin. Because before this ended, they'd all learn the same lesson. I wasn't their fixer anymore. I was their reckoning. The boardroom smelled like fear and furniture polish. 12 men and 2 women sat around a glass table, each looking like they hadn't slept in 3 days, which they hadn't. The Lennox contracts ghost still haunted the room. Logan's absence hovered like a deleted file you weren't sure you'd emptied from the trash yet. The chairman tapped his pen against a leather folder. Once, twice, then stopped, looking at me like a man hoping the rope he's tied is actually a lifeline. We need a stabilizing figure, he said, voice low. If the others couldn't hear him, though they were all leaning in like vultures. Interim, just until things settle. He didn't say CEO, not yet, but the word bloomed in the silence like a dropped match in a dry field. My fingers rested lightly on the tabletop. I didn't nod, I didn't blink. I just let the tension stretch. The board chair added, almost whispering now, "We want you." There it was. The sentence that had taken 18 years and a mountain of silence to reach. I glanced around the table. Darren stared into his lap like it might save him. Paul tried to make eye contact, then gave up. Meredith, to her credit, looked straight at me and gave the smallest nod. On paper, I said finally, tone neutral. I'll accept. Interim capacity, for now. The relief in the room was immediate and pathetic. Shoulders slumped. Phones unlocked. Someone even exhaled a quiet thank God. But as they launched into logistics, titles, timelines, press releases, I excused myself for 10 minutes to make the announcement clean. I walked back to my office, closed the door, typed one email to my lawyer. Subject, retroactive clause. Body, please file and timestamp the attached amendment immediately. Full executive authority, including hiring/firing powers, retroactive to the date of client incident, see dinner footage, 7:42 p.m. timestamp. Non-negotiable. CS, I attached the clause we drafted the night I walked out of the chairman's estate. I'd had it ready, waiting, because I wasn't going to hold the crown on loan. I was going to weld it to my skull. When I returned to the boardroom, no one asked questions. They assumed I'd been updating my calendar. They never did learn. By 3:27 p.m., the internal memo went live. Subject, leadership transition. One paragraph, polished, vague, predictable. Effective immediately, Caroline Shaw will assume interim executive oversight of firm operations. We are grateful for her leadership during this pivotal moment. No one used the word CEO. They didn't need to. The staff knew. Clients knew. The moment Howard Lennox publicly eviscerated their golden boy, the firm's future stopped wearing cufflinks and started wearing heels. I took the elevator down 2 floors alone. It felt like an ending. As I passed the west hallway, the premium executive corridor, I paused. Logan's corner office was open. The nameplate was already gone. Inside, 2 facilities workers were painting over the custom navy wall he'd demanded, the one that cost more than my yearly travel budget. Color of choice now, clean, neutral white, timeless. I turned to leave and caught sight of someone leaning against the wall, phone in hand. The intern, the one who'd filmed it all. The dinner, handshake, the spit. She stood straighter when she saw me. I nodded once. Keep the footage safe, I said, just loud enough to carry. She didn't smile, just nodded back, smart girl. I walked to my new office, the one with no nameplate yet, and closed the door behind me. I didn't exhale, I didn't relax, because the vote was done. The crown was on, and the kingdom still rotten underneath. The ballroom was made of glass and lies, crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, tables named after Greek gods. Rows of investors dressed like funeral attendees, black suits, navy dresses, Rolexes ticking like nervous heartbeats. The firm's annual summit had always been theater. But today, it was war paint and pretense. The agenda was packed with half-truths, market outlooks, partnership projections, a new transparency initiative no one would ever read, slotted right between the keynote and the shareholder Q&A. Introduction of new interim CEO Caroline Shaw. I could feel the temperature drop before they even said my name. The board chair stepped up to the podium, voice rehearsed within an inch of its soul. We're proud to welcome a leader whose contributions span nearly 2 decades, often behind the scenes, always at the heart of our success. Applause. Polite. Shallow. Kind that claps just enough to imply respect while wondering if the wine is being served yet. I walked to the stage in silence. I wore no jewelry, no flash, just a black suit and heels that didn't click, they punctuated. As I stepped up, the AV team handed me a clicker. My speech was loaded, polished. A team of writers had triple-checked it for tone and buzzwords. On the screen behind me, the first slide appeared: stability, vision, growth. I didn't read it. I turned to the room and said, "We're going to do something different." The screen went black. The room stilled. This firm, I began, has thrived on legacy. On old money, old names, and old rules. I paused. But legacy without accountability is rot in a velvet box. A few heads tilted, some investors leaned in, a few execs shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. In the past 6 weeks, we've lost contracts, executives, and reputations. But what we gained, finally, is clarity. Click, a new slide. Code of Conduct 2.0 effective immediately on screen, bullet points. Plain, blunt, and forcible. No retaliation protection for whistleblowers. Equity audits conducted quarterly. No more NDAs shielding misconduct. Leadership reviews by anonymous peer panels. Client contracts tied to ethical behavior metrics. Zero tolerance policy for bias-based exclusion. This is not branding. This is policy. I let the words settle like a storm cloud. The chairman stared, face unreadable. Meredith's jaw tightened. Darren didn't blink because blinking would have meant acknowledgement. Then I clicked one last time. Final slide, no words, just a single still frame from the dinner. Me, hand extended. Logan, lips curled mid-sentence. I don't shake hands with staff. Gasps rippled like someone had opened a window mid-blizzard. Beneath the image, one phrase in stark white letters, respect isn't optional. I looked up from the slide, met the eyes of every board member, one by one. And then I said, we don't work for the sons of men who built this. A pause, just long enough, we work for the future. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full of retribution, of reckonings quietly unfolding behind pocketed phones and discreet texts. A few investors began clapping. Slowly, then more, then louder. Some smiles were real, most weren't, didn't matter. The point had been made, not with fire, with frost, with the undeniable clarity of a woman who had waited 18 years not just to be heard, but to rewrite the script. I walked off the stage with my spine straight and my footsteps deliberate. There would be backlash. There would be whispers. There might even be war. Good, let them come, because the crown wasn't just mine now. I'd rewritten the rules of who gets to wear it. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.
아, 제발. 근데 오늘도 약간 아침 방송 해보니까 아침에 일하시는 분들이 많나봐. 야, 언제 다들 오시노? 다들 언제 오시노, 슈발. 좋겠다. 예, 이거 1,000원도 못 얻어먹겠는데, 예, 용돈 1,000원도 못 받겠는데, 이러다가. 총표정 난국이다, 이건 진짜.
안녕하세요, 대성입니다.
좀만 도와주세요. 도착하기 전에. 그래도 도착하기 전에 호떡 값이라도 좀 받고 싶어요. 도도 말고 덜도 말고 호떡이라도 먹고 싶다, 진짜. 호떡이라도.
사랑을 속닥속닥 자기야 날 봐, 어딜 봐 날 봐.
아, 이거 큰일 났네. 괜히 용돈을 산다고 했나? 오늘 좀 수익 창출名목으로다가 좀 하려고 했는데 안 되네. 그러니까 어제랑 사뭇 분위기가 달라. 아, 후님도 안녕하세요. 어제랑 사뭇 분위기가 달라. 어제는 거의 뭐 축제였는데 오늘은 거짓 뭐 제사상이지, 제사상. 그냥 여기 장례식 아니야, 장례식? 아니야, 아직도 도착할 때까지 몰라요. 또 도착하고 나면 또 나올 수도 있어. 그래, 포기하지 말자. 하다못해 50개라도 받아야 돼. 호떡은 먹고 가야지 여러분들. 호떡은 예, 그리고 또 여러분들이 좋아하는 1,000원짜리 반찬 가게도 있습니다.
귀여워 You're so sexy 아웅게 물어주고 싶어 한평생 다가도록 당신과 살고
예, 또 여러분들이 좋아하는 1,000원짜리 반찬집. 제발 좀만 좀 어떻게 좀 용돈 조금만 많이 안 바래요. 그냥 일단 호떡부터 먹을 정도만 좀 구하고 싶네요. 호떡만. 호떡이라도 먹고 싶어. 호떡. 그럴 것 같아요. 느낌이 딱 그 느낌이야. 그냥 시장 들어갔다가